Audio Jungle.
Welcome to Law Excellence, and I am Harsha Manava. We are discussing the book Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. And today we are in the last video. So with today we'll close this book, and I hope I have done my part and made this journey interesting for you. It certainly was very interesting for me. I've learned so many new things, new ideas, and I think the book kind of shattered many myths. So I hope this whole session had the same impact and the same feeling on you. And I hope I had also motivated you to, if not immediately, to at some point grab this book and get immersed in it and maybe get swept and overwhelmed by its reach. So let us today take up the last chapter and see the final conclusion. How do we end this epic journey? So Harari ends this whole discussion with a projection, a perspective into what could be the nature of human future. How would life, so far we discussed how was life. This chapter gives us a brief overview on what could be the possibilities of future. It gives broadly 3 possibilities. And of course, the next book, the sequel to this book is called Homo Deus, and there Harari discusses in detail the nature of technology, evolving technology, and how it's going to impact us. So Harari says so far, the basic premise is that so far natural selection that Darwin proposed was the driving force behind human change. So natural selection was very important, wasn't it? And many other people objected to Darwin's idea of natural selection because natural selection essentially tells us that we are not special. We are an accidental outcome of nature's processes, and in terms of our background, we are very close to chimpanzees. If things went a different way, we could have been in the chimpanzee's place and they could have been in our position. So natural selection doesn't place humans on a pedestal. It places humans in the right position, which is next to apes and monkeys. So many people, the powerful figures of Darwin's time, basically the church, religious figures, found this very difficult to accept, because for centuries they have advocated the idea that there was a divine creator, a God, and he designed man in his own image. That man was a special being and man was an outcome of God's special favor, special creation. They believed in creationism. But these arguments were dismissed, that humans could be, that the argument that humans were special and they could take charge of natural selection was by and large not believed to be true, because Darwin had the final say. He said natural selection is final and we cannot determine the outcome. We are just cogs in the wheel of natural selection and we just go with it. But Harari says that is about to change, that the limits of laws of natural selection are now being broken, are being transcended by humans through what we are calling as intelligent design. That using the power of technology that we have unleashed, we are trying to push the boundaries of the laws of natural selection. That we are able to meddle with this iron law of natural selection and determine the outcomes of human progress. How are we able to do it? What is the mechanism? Harari proposes three ways, three possibilities in which this could happen. First, through biological engineering, that is genetic develops in biotechnology and genetics. Second is through cyborg engineering, and third is the engineering of inorganic life. So 1, 2 and 3. There are three principal tools that we have at our disposal. Let us look at them one by one. First is the biological engineering. Biological engineering is largely about biotechnology. And biotechnology, no other field, maybe nuclear comes a close second, but no other field of 20th and 21st century have changed human life as much as probably biotechnology. How did we do that? With the developments in biotechnology have helped us in numerous ways. We have been able to, through DNA technology, we are able to modify genetic sequence, we are able to mix different genes, and we are using them to create GMO crops. We are using them to create medicines like insulin, and the progress in genetics is being used for cloning. We have created a sheep, Dolly, and of course from sheep we have come a long distance. We are maybe looking at a possibility where we may clone a human at some point of time. We have artificial insemination. Recently we have come up with Human Genome Project. The entire human genome has been mapped. That gave way to the next step, that is DNA editing, gene editing technology, CRISPR-Cas9. So we know the gene sequence. We can now create sequences of DNA and sequences of genes. We are even able to take a piece of DNA, cut it using scissors called CRISPR-Cas9 and insert a DNA of interest. So with each day we are making enormous progress, and maybe the day is not so far when human organs can be grown in labs. And maybe if you have a liver infection, you can order a liver through Amazon and the liver will be delivered to your nearest hospital. You can just go and get your liver transplanted. So that is the level at which we are changing. Look at this mice here. So scientists have tried to grow human ear on a mice back, on the back of a mice. So the figure looks very ugly, I understand the emotion, but just get over that and try to understand the progress in genetic engineering. So biological engineering is making humans push the limits of their biology. It's giving them power. Maybe the elixir of life, that is the whole project of trying to understand aging and trying to find a solution to all sorts of critical illnesses and try to achieve the goal of ending the idea of death. All this can only be done through biological engineering. And of course, therein lies the possibility of people trying to create superhumans. Selective. We've seen ads in paper sometimes. We are parents who don't have children. We want DNA of a specific donor who is 6 foot in height, who has high IQ, and so on. We only want his semen. And we are willing to pay a premium for that semen for in vitro fertilization. So all these sorts of interfering with human natural process of making children or creating superhumans is also another possibility. That can lead to a different class of humans. Within Homo sapiens, you can have a class of humans who are superhumans and the other rest. There is even a project called as the Neanderthal Genome Project. Here they've almost mapped the Neanderthal genome, and now there are ideas to create a Neanderthal child by implanting Neanderthal DNA into a sapien ovum. So they're trying to create Neanderthal DNA and insert the Neanderthal DNA into a sapien ovum and then use this ovum to grow a Neanderthal child in a human mother. Very close to surrogacy. In surrogacy, the mother carries another child. So this is very close to surrogacy. So will all this one day lead to designing better sapiens, genius humans who will be powerful for sure, but what if they use their power to enrich themselves and they use those power to subjugate, suppress others? What if instead of becoming superheroes, they turn out to be super villains? What if they're not like the Avengers, but what if they're like the villains in this movie? Then what about humanity? The next possibility is bionic life. Here you have to understand a term called cyborgs. Cyborgs is a recent term that has been coined to describe people who are a mix of both organic and inorganic life. Most of us are organic, isn't it? We have face, ears, we are all made of organic material, cells, living cells, tissues. But let us say a person, look at this image here maybe. This is an example of a cyborg, some kind of a cyborg person, where you don't have an arm, you had to amputate, or there was a childhood abnormality, for some reason the arm has to be amputated. And now you create an inorganic arm and fix it. So you may lose your arm, but you're replacing it with a inorganic arm, which may be more powerful. This inorganic arm here could be vastly more powerful. If your arm can lift 10 kg, maybe this arm can lift 100 kg. So this may be hugely powerful. So this combination of organic and inorganic is what is called as cyborgs. Cyborgs are beings which combine organic and inorganic parts. The examples of such things could be bionic arms. So the whole technology is called bionics. You can have bionic arms, bionic ears, and retinal prostheses. You can create eyes like this, an artificial eye, made not through genetic engineering or by growing stem cells, but from some metal, from some inorganic substance. You can grow an eye that has the same function, that may not be the biological eye, but yet has the same functionality, the visual purpose of a normal eye. And many agencies are testing projects using this technology. For example, DARPA, this is a leading R&D agency for US defense research. They are trying to create a project where they're trying to create an inorganic technology that tries to connect itself wirelessly with many brains and thereby create a collective mind which can read the patterns from many brains. Very powerful technology, isn't it? But what if these collective brains can then be linked to internet? And what if governments can use this to suppress freedoms? Or what if terrorists get access to this technology? And what if they want to use this to target innocent lives? What is the possibility? Next, the last aspect is developing completely inorganic beings. What are these inorganic beings? They're not. So first we had organic humans and interfering in humans through biological engineering. Second, a mix of organic, inorganic, bionics, human with some arm. The third possibility is entirely inorganic beings. Now what do we mean by that? You may be shocked. We are referring to things like computer programs, computer viruses, basic things, isn't it? A computer virus, once it is coded and inserted into the web, it spreads, starts multiplying, goes from one place to another, and the code tweaked, gets modified, gets changed as it keeps moving from one system to another. It doesn't have to be changed again and again. It has the inner capacity to change itself. It is mutating, just like normal beings. So computer programs, computer viruses they can undergo independent evolution. So, and algorithms. What if algorithms are another inorganic beings? What do we mean by algorithms? These are the programs that are behind many things you use. Your YouTube, your Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, all these are Google search. All these behind them have algorithms. And these algorithms are today controlling you in a way, isn't it? Your YouTube, when you watch a few videos, then displays. You might also like some other videos. You click, then it shows some other. You keep clicking. So YouTube already knows what you want to watch, or it knows what you may like and keeps throwing that at you, with the whole goal being to keep you on YouTube for as long as possible. Isn't it? So are we controlling the algorithm that is YouTube, or the algorithm in YouTube is understanding us, learning our behavior, and is trying to manipulate us? So these are all examples of inorganic beings. Of course, the peak, the pinnacle of the inorganic being revolution comes in the form of AI, artificial intelligence. We are hearing about people like Elon Musk, Bill Gates, so many other world leaders talking about AI. And if the world is now debating, will AI be good or will it be dangerous? Will it create, will it make AI work in the favor of humans, or will it lead to AI taking over humans? Hollywood has responded with movies like Her, where the systems, people start falling in love with this AIs, but the AIs eventually abandon humans and leave them in an emotional void. So what is AI going to do? Will it be a superhero that we can rely on to save ourselves, or will AIs become a super class of super people, and will the AIs now start making humans their subordinates like we did to chimpanzees? So in that sense, are we creating our own destruction? So all these three possibilities, genetic engineering, cyborg, and inorganic beings, all of them have the potential to transform our lives for the good, or they may transform our lives for the worse. In fact, they may very well create the end of the species Homo sapien. In fact, Harari thinks the end of Homo sapien is not so far. He thinks they have about only 1,000 years. That's it. Harari thinks, unlike Homo erectus, which lived for almost 2 lakh years, Harari thinks Homo sapiens lifespan has only about, is at the maximum they only have 1,000 years. That's it. Their duration, their future is not more than 1,000 years. That is, if climate change doesn't kill us in the next century. So in that sense, a new singularity is being created. What is this? A new singularity is a point at which the rules before the situation do not apply anymore to the situation that follows the singularity point. It's like the Big Bang singularity. So Harari thinks, are we approaching a new singularity, a new point where the concepts, the principles, the words that we have known so long, will they no longer be relevant in the future? That our future will be so different from our present and past that all the knowledge we have accumulated will not help us to face that future. Are we going towards that situation, a new singularity? And finally, he concludes with the Frankenstein prophecy. What is this Frankenstein prophecy? Frankenstein is the story of a scientist. The scientist wants to create a superior being. His whole goal is to create some superior technology. He creates it finally, but in the story, the creation, the technology that he created, finally benefits out of his creation and then uses all the power to take over the scientist himself. So Frankenstein is a monster. We call it a Frankenstein monster, where your own creation uses your power to take over you itself. So you end up creating something that overpowers you and takes control over you. So in that sense, are we, through our technological capability, creating a Frankenstein monster that we have created only for it to take over our lives? Are we moving towards that situation? So Harari leaves us with these thoughts and asks us to reflect and answer these basic questions. What do we want to become, and what do we want? Before madly investing in scientific and technological progress, he wants us to examine what are we, what do we want, what is happiness, and then use technology to find answers to these questions, rather than madly letting technology go haywire, rather than create a prison, a cage that is built through our intelligence only so that we can be caged and become prisoners. So instead of being a prisoners of technology, Harari wants us to ask these questions so that technology becomes our supporting agent rather than our own ruler. So with that, Harari concludes the book. Of course, he ends it with a humility, saying, these are my views, these are my predictions. Of course, I may be totally wrong, because if you went back 60 years, that is in the 1950s and 60s, many historians and scientists projected things like, yes, we will soon colonize space, we will soon see huge nuclear proliferation. They projected doom for the world, and they anticipated humans colonizing space by 2000. But none of that happened. While they predicted those things which didn't happen, none of them foresaw internet. No scientist, no historian, no political thinker foresaw the coming of internet. So that is the nature of human story. Things we predict may not happen, things we don't have any clue to may just pop on the scene. So this is what Harari ends. This is the note of caution that he leaves us with. So think on these possibilities and try to imagine what humanity's future could be like. Thank you for staying with me throughout this book. I had enjoyed reading it and I had enjoyed thoroughly making this content and bringing it to you. I hope you had liked it too. And a very big thank you and goodbye.